Hello, everybody. It is the Graceful Renegade, aka Grace, and I am here with the lovely Ben, aka Dork in the Road. Wow, bro. He is kind of rude sometimes, but he is Dork in the Road. And we are your internet writing buddies. Thank you for joining us this week. Ben, how are you?
I'm lovely and rude, apparently.
I apologize. You're not rude most of the time, although there are moments, that is for sure.
Yeah, there's about an 8 beer realm when F that guy becomes like what I say every third sentence. And,
Yeah.
you know, that's
I mean,
why coming to events is fun, because you get to meet that dork in the road.
to be fair, I think everybody has that 8 beer cap of becoming somewhat of an asshole, but what do I know?
Well, I just think I'm funny. Like, I'm not even trying to be mean, but it probably
Yeah,
is a little mean.
that's okay. That sarcasm gets stretched a little bit, but thank you for being here this week, everybody. We are making this week all about me because, it's usually all about Ben, so we're switching it up.
I love that
But
joke.
before we get started, I just genuinely wanted to say I released my Thailand video on my YouTube channel on Monday, and I wanted to give a special shout out to all of the people who sent me messages and made comments. It's been such an incredible couple of days, and the reception it's gotten has been wonderful. So, thank you to everybody who watched the video. If you haven't watched it yet and you have any interest to see kind of what I do as a videographer, it's on my YouTube channel under the Graceful Renegade. Essentially, it follows my trip in Thailand last year around this time. I was there for about a month working with Harley Davidson Asia, and it was the hottest month on record in Thailand ever, according to NASA. It was a miserable trip, but it was so incredible at the same time. So I'm so happy I finally got to share that footage with everybody and tell that story. And again, thank you so much to everybody for all of the support. It's been great. Ben, what did you think?
Well, let's give credit to the real MVP, because you were like, I don't know if I should take the time to put all this together, and I
True.
was like, you should definitely do it. So
Yeah.
really, it's me. You should really be thanking me.
It is
Also,
actually very true. I texted Ben many times and I was like, I don't even want to touch this footage. And he was like, you are a moron if you do not use the footage.
it's such a
So,
unique experience. Share it, inspire people,
yeah.
and that's exactly what you did.
And
And
yeah,
all joking aside, like, very inspirational, very awesome, honestly, piece of content that you created. I am a YouTuber, right? At best, I have no interest in being a filmmaker or making cinema. You are a filmmaker. And what's great about you is you can do both. Get you a girl that can do both. Get you a co-host that can do both. I did. So, because you make great vlogs and stuff too, like your Roadrunner series is exactly kind of what I do.
yeah.
But you can go out and drop this like amazing David Attenborough documentary style, share visceral, like when you talk about the heat and how like oppressive it was. Like, I feel that, and I think
Yeah.
it's because you're not just a writer, you're also a writer.
Yeah.
And you sit down, you write a script, the narration is crisp, it's well researched, and it all just comes together. You're the total package. And
Aw,
kudos
thanks,
to you,
Ben.
because you
Aw.
put together an amazing piece of content, and if people haven't seen it, they're dumb.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for that. I'm seriously about to cry because it means a lot coming from you and I appreciate it very much. But yeah, I really hope everybody gives it a view and just checks it out. It's being a videographer is something that I have invested the last 2 years of my life into doing, and it's been very cool to work in documentaries. But my heart and soul really lies in doing a lot of this travel stuff and being able to tell the stories I have from those experiences. So it was so fun to be able to put this together after a year and share it, even though it was one of the most miserable months of my life. But on that note, one of the reasons why I wanted to make this week completely all about me is because usually when I post these videos and when I have posted these videos on YouTube in the last year and a half, I get a lot of people that ask me the same question. And that is, what is it actually like to be a motorcycle nomad? What is it like to actually live off of your bike? And we're not just talking about like 2 weeks on a bike or a month on a bike. We are talking about full time. Your whole world is on your motorcycle with you. And I did that for 14 months. And I had this wealth of knowledge that I haven't quite been able to share. And I realized that unfortunately that means I'm going to be doing most of the talking today and Ben is not, but Ben will be helping me out and chiming in from time to time, I think, to ask questions and contribute as best he can. But there are a lot of elements of this too that like Ben has obviously done a lot of lengthy trips on his bike, which I know he can kind of add info from, but there's definitely a different element to when it's just living off the bike.
Yeah, well, and it's the thing we've talked about before. I think that what's great about our diverse experiences is it enables us to have these different perspectives. And, while I don't have your experience, I do have a lot of the questions and misconceptions that people that don't have that experience have. And, it's definitely like an ideal, like that you said Kerouac before when we were talking about it. And that's exactly it, that I read On the Road and I want to go. I have a buddy who like read it and like after college went hitchhiking around the country, like
Yeah,
this idea of living on the road. And there's lots of movies that glorify and make it look like this very romantic ideal of traveling and being free. And I'm not
yeah,
saying it's not those things, but it's not just those things, I'm
yeah,
guessing, having not done it. And what I've done, the 5 days living, quote unquote, living off your bike, camping and buying food at gas stations, is not the same as like you have no home. Like you give up your
yeah,
home and you live on the road. I just went on a
yeah.
vacation, right? But I was coming home at the end. What you did was very different than that, and I think it's cool to kind of talk about that distinction and talk about the nitty gritty, dirty, ugly truth about what
Yeah,
that's like.
absolutely. And yeah, I mean, like we talked about before, ironically enough too, I read On the Road in college and in high school, like a lot of people, which is Kerouac's book. And I read it the whole first month I was on the road. I would pick segments of the book to read because I did go into it with a very romantic idea about what the experience was going to be. And while certain aspects of that were very true, other aspects of it were not quite there. And so we're going to tap into that today. And first up, to kind of preface this, I just want to say that when you start to kind of take the steps to make a decision like this, to live off your bike as a nomad, first up is just that you have to understand that you leave everything behind, all of the comforts, all of the routines, everything you ever knew. That includes your pets, your kids, your house, your spouse, if you have one, all of your belongings. None of that exists when you're out there. You can stay connected to everybody, but you are disconnected once you start riding and traveling. Like I said this earlier, and I know it's funny, but it's true. Like you become like a migrating ghost. Like you kind of can come into places and hang out for a minute, but then the second you're gone, it's like you didn't exist. And that's true also then when you're at home, when you're back visiting friends, like you're kind of there, but you aren't. And you meet plenty of people along the way, some that are doing similar things to you, others that are just traveling, but no one really sticks around. This is a solo journey. It's really hard on your body. It opens up a lot of doors in your mind in ways you couldn't imagine possible. And it really unburdens your spirit if you're dealing with a lot of that different type of heavier life stuff. But you have to go into it with the mindset that you have nothing to lose, because that is kind of the biggest constant. Because otherwise, your biggest concern is going to be, well, I need to get home to the stuff that's waiting for me. Like I sacrificed the time to be here, but there's stuff that's waiting for me. And you can't have stuff waiting for you. That's just not really how it works. And I know a lot of people might argue with me on that, but that's just the difference between deciding between nomadic existence impermanently versus permanently. And it's a big, big difference. It becomes either an extended vacation or a lifestyle choice. And when I did it, it was a lifestyle choice. And the other piece of that too, and this is something that I actually had, so Alex Chacon, who actually kind of indoctrinated me into this whole lifestyle, I asked for some of his points earlier today because he's been doing this for a lot longer than I have. And one of the big things he brought up was it comes in waves. Like you'll have 2 to 3 weeks or that first month where you're riding that high wave and it feels insane and cool and awesome. But then you will hit a week or a day or even a month where it is just, ugh, it bottoms out and it's not fun. You are always thinking about being home. You're wanting to be home. You're missing the comforts of home. And you just have to ride it out. That's just a part of it. And that's also why you see a lot of people that say, oh, I'm going to go do this. And they do it for maybe a month or a season. And then they go home and then they figure it out. I think really doing something like this, it's a year of your life at least to kind of get the full spectrum of what it means to live like a nomad.
Yeah, and I think people, you kind of have to be uniquely qualified to make it work, right? You have to be in a
Yeah.
place in your life where I'm not saying you don't have any entanglements, but you have to be able to pause or separate from them long enough, because otherwise it is a vacation. I get this question a lot. Why aren't you on the road all the time? If I were you and it was my job, I would never be home. And it's like, well, I have a wife and a kid, and like
Yeah.
we have 6 pets, and just like all of the like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna miss my kid's high school existence. When she's out of the house, I'll be gone probably more.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of connections, and I have to be here, and that's why I take trips and vacations, and not
Right.
out there just living the life.
Right. And that was the thing about me at that time, was I was uniquely qualified. I'm divorced. I had just gone through a really bad breakup. I had to leave my job that I loved at the time, and I hit a point where I was just like, I've always wanted to do something like this, so why not just try it now? And I was also broke and didn't have a lot going for me. I had a remote job that was paying my bills, but I was barely getting by. And I just hit a point in my life where I had absolutely nothing left to lose. And so I made the decision to sell what I did have and just see how this experience could, really change my life or put me in a better direction. And it definitely did. And we'll definitely get to that towards the end. But if we're going to jump into more of the tactical side of this, I have 3 big points about packing that I want to stress. And the first is packing as light as possible with food. I know a lot of people think of this as like a camp experience. It is not. This is not a camping trip. This is a surviving trip. With food, don't bring anything you don't need. I usually pack my jet boil for emergencies, electrolytes, water, power bars, vitamins, coffee, ramen, just in case I have nothing else, and whiskey, of course. But most of my meals are obtained at the grocery store, like in the to-go section, or at Subway. Like, I know everybody had this running joke about me when I was on the road about Subway, but it's a $5 sandwich, and you can get a foot long for like $8, and that's 2 of your meals for the day. So now, obviously, I'm a little bit smaller, so that will suffice for me. But if you are eating 2 foot longs, that's $16 for your food for the day. Like, just think of it that way. You just have to kind of weigh those options out.
Well,
Also,
semi-healthy and available everywhere, right? Like, it
right.
just makes sense, and fast.
Right. Like, Ben, when you normally go and do like a camp trip, like do you bring like a stove or anything with you?
So that's one of the things I learned on my from my first trip to my second. This first trip, I carried a lot of stuff. Second trip, it's like you have to stop for gas every day anyway. So I was
Yeah.
picking up food along the way, and honestly, I ended up not camping or not cooking at camp at all, except for the night that a very amazing friend of mine brought us steak and beer. But for the most part, we were just eating in town at a gas station, whatever, a restaurant, and then headed out to find a place to camp. So it was funny hearing you say, like, I have coffee and I have whiskey and I have
Yeah.
ramen in case shit goes sideways. And that's what I carry.
Right.
Like, I usually have a bag meal and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm also hitting places every day, multiple times generally, just to fuel
Right.
up.
Yeah. And I know there are people that are like diehard about the camping thing and whatever else, but I'm telling you, if you're doing this permanently, always have ramen, because it doesn't matter what time of day it is. If you need some food, you can throw something in the jet boil and make it happen. But
Well, it's
um,
salty too, so if you're sweating a lot,
yes,
that helps.
exactly. And it's a fail safe no matter what, and it takes up no space whatsoever. But yeah, in general, food, again, like I have power bars, I have electrolytes, basics. That's all you need. When it comes to clothes, so this is part 2 of packing as lightly as possible. Just kind of be prepared to get crusty. You can keep a relatively clean existence if you want to, but it's going to take time and resources that I guarantee you after a month or so, you're not going to give a shit about. So keep that in mind. But it's always about strategizing with layers. This comes into play whether you're doing an ADV trip or not as well. Like if you're doing a 2-week ADV trip and you're carrying your stuff with you, it's the same type of protocol. You just have to keep in mind that you're going to be in your gear most of the time, and then have like a couple pairs of underwear, a couple pairs of socks, and that's really it. If you're traveling more during the wintry seasons and the colder seasons, you're going to have to pack more. And you're also going to have to just be prepared to be a little bit more cold. But it just takes up a little extra space. And in those situations, sorry, vegans, but pack your down, pack those lightweight things that are going to keep you extra warm. I know we talked about this last one of our past episodes, Ben, but when I'm outside and traveling during the winter, what I would always do is put my lightweight down jacket on underneath my motorcycle jacket, and I would be so warm. So it's all about layers, and it's all about just not packing much at all. If you ever get to a point where you need to do laundry, there are laundromats everywhere, and they are cheap. It doesn't matter if you're in the US or Southeast Asia, and obviously I've been everywhere, so I'm telling you, they're everywhere. It doesn't take much. It takes maybe an hour, hour and a half, and almost everywhere you go will have Wi-Fi or there's a coffee shop nearby. So just make sure you're scheduling that into your day. You might need to do laundry once a week, and that's just how it goes, but packing as light as possible, always a
So
key component.
on the topic of packing, actually, I think it might be really useful, and I'm curious myself. So can you just talk about really quickly what bike you were on and what was your luggage setup?
So I was very fortunate that I was on a Honda CB500X, which I was super comfortable with riding on and off road. I will say now, after doing the time I did on that bike, that if you are going to do a nomadic lifestyle as a touring ADV rider, get a little bit bigger of a bike. And the reason I say that is because I had a lot of highway miles where I thought I was going to die. Long stretches of highway with terrible weather, crazy drivers, etc. And let me tell you, it was miserable when you're on a bike that doesn't have that much power. It's fully loaded down and it's light. You know, you can get blown all over the road. I mean, there's been plenty of days where I was literally just screaming and crying in my helmet because I just wanted to get off the highway, but you don't have a choice. So maybe a little bit bigger of a bike. I obviously have the Trans Alp now. I can't wait to tour around on that all summer. It's going to be epic, but a little bit bigger of a bike I would suggest. But if not, I did great on the CB and I loved it. Luggage wise, I had a setup from Giant Loop. I was an ambassador for them. I still work with them all the time, and they're an amazing company. They have really great soft luggage. I know a lot of people ask me questions about my luggage because I carry a lot of tech gear. And that concern is, well, how do you keep it protected? And it's, well, I bought cases that were protective for all of my stuff and then put it in my luggage. I don't always think that hard luggage is going to solve all your problems in that department. It's about how you, it's not about the luggage. So I was very careful with my strategies with that. But yeah, I had a full setup. I had round the world panniers. I had a couple of just, I think I had the Rogue bag and the Tillamook bag on the back, and Fandango tank bag. I had the pannier, side panniers, and everything was loaded, including a backpack on my back. So you can imagine how much weight was on that little CB. We were having a good time.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, yeah. But so last up here with packing as light as possible, part three, which kind of plays into this, is the tools component. And this is super important because I know there's a lot of people that are going to tell me I'm out of my mind, but don't pack too many tools. I know people are going to curse at me for this, but it's too heavy when you're already carrying this much stuff to survive. And a side note here, if you're doing a round the world trip or you're going somewhere super isolated, then yeah, you need to pack some fork seals, some spark plugs, maybe valve stems, whatever else, so that you have the parts to fix those things if it goes wrong. But if you're in North America, every shop that is within a couple 100-mile radius is going to have what you need there. And obviously that's very bike dependent, but if you're on a Honda or something like that, or a KLR, you can fix those bikes anywhere. And they're great. Like, that's one of the great things about having those bikes. So usually what I had with me, I stuck to the basics. I had a roadside toolkit that I very rarely ever used, if ever used. Chain lube, tire pressure gauge, that obviously you use all the time. I had a little pump too. Obviously you're going to need that to, pump tires up and also deflate them if you're going off road. First aid kit was very important, and this wasn't for major things. This is for, like, you cut your hand on something and you don't want it to get infected in your glove when you're riding and it's 100 degrees outside, that type of thing. Duct tape, I swear by duct tape, I always will. Then you also have zip ties. What else? I'm missing something. Oh, this is the big one that I always suggest. Bring straps for your bike. I was in the middle of, I believe, Arizona, and I got stuck in a winter storm on Highway 10, and it was awful. It was so bad that I actually couldn't ride. So I had to rent a U-Haul truck and drive the rest of my way up to Las Vegas, where I was staying with my friends there. And I got to do that super easily because I just had two soft straps in my bag, and I was able to tie my bike in the back of U-Haul and make the rest of the way. So I can't tell you the number of times those have come in handy. It's probably been 4 or 5 times, not just with my bike, but with friends' bikes. And then last up would be just a tarp and or a bike cover. You never know when you're going to need one, and that's always a handy thing to have.
I always say don't carry tools for stuff you don't know how to fix. Especially if
Yes.
you're by yourself. It's a little different when you're in a group and somebody else may know how. But you can also divide up your tools if you're in a group so you can carry more.
Right. Absolutely.
That U-Haul tip is a great one. I just saw a post on Reddit. Somebody was saying they had a bike breakdown and the shipping company wanted like $5,000 or $6,000 to transfer at home for them, and so he went and rented a U-Haul truck and trailer and saved thousands doing that. And I've seen
Yeah.
Nathan and Chris did that when Nathan's bike grenaded
Yeah.
in California. I've seen
Yeah.
a few examples of that. So that's a great pro tip to keep in mind.
It is, and it'll really save your ass. Like again, like I had 3 different times I had to do that with the CB, and it wasn't even because of mechanical issues. It was purely weather because I would have these storms come in, and this was when I was, out in the middle of nowhere in the winter. There's just nothing you can do if 3 feet of snow is on the ground. There's nothing you can do. And I'm not the type of rider where I'm going to risk my neck just to get through it. Like certain weather, yeah, I'll ride through rain, but it hits a point where it's just not safe and you might as well. So definitely keep that one in the back of your brain if you're ever doing a long distance trip. It helps so much. Moving forward, this is the big one that I try and share with everybody as much as I can is you have to keep it sustainable. Obviously, not everyone is retired with a savings account or as a trust fund baby. So if you are kind of a more normal person and you want to do this on a permanent basis, you have to have a remote job or some kind of remote work. And in that case, your 2 places that you're going to be working all the time are going to be coffee shops. For me, it was always Starbucks because the Wi-Fi was always fast. And you can get one small cup of black coffee for $3 and hang out all day. No one will ask questions. You have a bathroom there. There's usually a Subway nearby. I guarantee it. And you can get lunch, whatever you need. Nobody bothers you. It's great. Public libraries are also a great one. Their Wi-Fi is always great and it's always quiet. So if you need a break from people just to work, whatever else, that's a great resource to have. But yeah, I lived on the road and I was obviously doing a lot of filming and a lot of that type of stuff. But I had a remote job. I had to work 25 to 30 hours a week. And I did that the whole time that I was nomad just so I could afford to be out there because it's not as cheap as everyone thinks it is. A lot of people say $50 a day, and you can do it that way. I definitely had a lot of weeks and months where I lived that slimly, but if you want to be comfortable, you don't get to do it that way. And that also comes into, the hospitality effect of it and where you're sleeping at night. Campgrounds have gotten more and more expensive,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're out west. California, average campground, $100 a night. Not joking.
Jesus.
And
Wow.
Walmart parking lots have become a little bit overrun with homeless, displaced community that's not always safe, unfortunately, just due to how realities are. Dispersed camping is also something you can do, but it's also not super safe, especially if you're a solo female traveler. You got to really kind of know what you're doing and know where you are. So if you aren't doing campgrounds, you are either hopping on an app. Like I used the ADV forum, which was awesome. I would hop on there and find people that were ADV riders like me who would house me for the night. And that was either, hey, sleep in the backyard, or hey, have a guest wing of the house and we'll have a chef prepared meal for you. And what's your favorite type of wine? It is everything you could possibly imagine. So
I'm going to need that address.
that's a great story. I stayed with a couple in Santa Barbara and they were not only gave me like an entire wing of their house, but they made me this incredible meal. As after I'd been filming in Big Sur all day, they got me a bottle of wine. They had a clawfoot bathtub I took a bath in after that. And I was just like, this might be one of the greatest days of my life. Yeah, pretty epic. But yeah, there's just a big difference. You can do the bare bones living, which is really paying as minimal as possible. In that case, you're going to be sleeping in parking lots or in campgrounds. And occasionally do a motel night, but even motels now are probably 60 to $80 a night. That's just a reality now.
Before taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of, it's not what it used to be like even 5 years ago, pre-pandemic. And a lot of that is because there was such a push during the pandemic. A lot of people started living on the road. So all of these road things have become very, very expensive. Let's see. I'm trying to think. I talked about the Walmart parking lots. I also just want to add here, if you are sleeping in a Walmart parking lot, which I have done, just remember that this is one of those nights where you don't put your earbuds in. And the reason I say that is because You need to be aware of your surroundings. There are going to be people there that might not be great. I was very lucky. I'm obviously such an extrovert and friendly person that I would go make friends and set up camp by people that look like nomads like me, a lot of van lifers typically. And so I felt safe being kind of within a community, but just be aware, just know when you need to take extra parameters to be safe, and then, do what you need to do. Uh, when it comes to an app, though, there are a lot of couch surfing apps you can grab. iOverlander, if you're camping, is actually my favorite one because it'll give you dispersed camping sites that are not super well known and that will have reviews on there too. So if there's weird, sketchy shit going on, you'll know ahead of time versus showing up there and being like, oh, well, fuck, there's tweakers everywhere. So, which happened to me on a number of occasions. Yeah, moving on. Another tip is to move slow. So usually if you're doing an expedition trip, like I know Ben's done a lot of these, you are trying to get from point to point every day. You have goals you need to hit, you have deadlines. You are trying to hit a certain amount of terrain as quickly as possible because you do need to get home and you do have responsibilities waiting for you. If you're living and doing this type of thing, move slow because that's the whole point. If you're not moving slow and actually taking the opportunity to explore where you are and see the things you need to see, then you're just going to rush through something when you should be taking your time. And that is the point of committing to this, is that you don't have a deadline. You don't have a rush to be anywhere. So why not try and experience all the things you want to versus feeling like you need to move on consistently?
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Like I'm too uptight for that, man. I would be like, well, I need to be here this day, and I want to do this and this and blah 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 blah, and I would just ruin it for myself.
Now, I mean, I'm type A enough that I had a plan, but there are also plenty of moments. Like I was in the southwestern United States from like last October until I went to Asia, pretty much. And it was great. I stuck around Joshua Tree for almost a month because I just loved it there. Like, and I didn't really do much. I worked, I did some rides. I didn't really even ride that much. I just had a couple campgrounds I went to, toured a lot, took a lot of time to catch up on the things I needed to, just with work and also with video content at that point. And then I kind of would move on. But that's just kind of one of the luxuries you have. Now, obviously not everybody is built that way. Not everybody wants to take their time, but you know, enjoy yourself. That's the whole point of being a nomad. The most important thing though, and I can't stress this enough, is having a purpose. Like, why do you want to live off a bike? Like like we talked about in the beginning, the romantic notion will fade super quickly. Like, are you wanting to see more of the world? Are you wanting to learn how to survive alone? Which I know a lot of women in particular have that, of just like wanting to figure out how to be independent. I was definitely one of those people. Are you wanting to learn how to use a camera and document and write, or all of these things? What do you want your end product to be for yourself? That is something that you absolutely need to think about. And I do also want to add that I know there's a lot of people that might say, I want to just do this and I don't want to worry about documenting anything or doing anything like that. And I think you're going to regret that. I think if you don't go into it the idea of wanting to remember this type of chapter of your life, then you're going to have regrets about that later. Because I do know people who have done trips like this and who have lived off bikes and didn't really take the notes they wish they had so they could remember some of the things that they experienced. And
Which is why I told you to make a video of your Thailand stuff.
exactly. Yeah. So, I think it's very important for your own self to be able to have whatever you need to be able to revisit that time in your life. It's so, so important. Wet wipes also. I mean, this is something I think everybody needs in their life. Just have wet wipes on you all the time. Very, very important.
Wet wipes are to Grace what neck gaiters are to Ben.
It's actually very true. Yeah. Wet wipes and duct tape, pretty much. Yeah.
So I want to ask you a question kind of
Yeah.
on the note of the purpose thing, which I think is valuable. And that's the kind of insight you only get with experience, right?
Right.
Because what I wonder about is the solitude.
Right.
And I know you said you're talking to people here and there, but that's all like surface level, like,
Yeah.
it's shallow, right? And you are an extrovert, which is good because you're able to do that, but it also means that you crave interaction and connection. And I feel
Yeah.
like you're not getting that when you're on the road, constantly meeting new people and spending a lot of time in camp by yourself, or just the silence in your head as you're writing for hours at a time, right?
Yeah.
So you have a lot of time to think and process. You know, that's kind of a meditation thing.
Right.
But how do you deal with that, and what is it like when you're out there on the road?
It's really hard. I think one of the biggest things you learn very quickly is you either can do it or you can't. And I certainly had plenty of moments where I thought I couldn't. But after about 4 months, I started to have these moments where I was just having fun by myself. I would have a couple glasses of wine, work on my book, and then I would literally turn music on at a campsite by myself and dance for an hour and just like have a good time. And you have to have those moments where you just are alone. And it's all about your journey too. At this point in my life, I needed to learn how to love being by myself. I am such an extrovert and I have a bad tendency sometimes to throw myself into so many social situations and so many things all at once without taking the time for myself. And I actually do really love to be alone now, but learning how to be alone is very difficult. And the only way to learn is by making yourself do it. And again, not everybody can do it, but it's also a matter of what you've been through as a person. I had left a very codependent marriage that I never really dealt with because of the pandemic and so many other things in my life at the time. So being able to do a trip like this and kind of make peace with that and learn to love who I was and love being just with myself was a really unique experience. But to counteract that, when I would get into towns, I would talk to everybody. I would be at the coffee shop making friends. I would make sure that I had people I was kind of en route to visit at some point, whether it was in like 3 weeks or next weekend or whatever else. Because when you do hit those low moments, which you do a lot, I probably cried once a day the entire time I was on the road. Um, you need something to look forward to. You need to know that, like, yeah, this sucks, but in 3 days, I'm going to be hanging out with Maggie and Justin in Vegas. Or in 2 weeks, I'm going to be in Mexico filming with Alex. Or I'm going to Vietnam in 3 months. Like there's little things like that that really get you through the low moments. But that's what you have to do. And when you do need those human interactions, this actually plays right into what I wanted to talk about next. You can't be afraid to ask for help. And this is a big thing that I think people weirdly hit the introvert button on pretty hardcore, and you should never do it. There are going to be so many moments you're going to need help. And you learn very quickly that if you're going to get through, you have to ask for it. I was filming on the Oregon coast, and it was so windy that my bike blew over the kickstand with all of my luggage on it. That's how windy it was.
You're not picking that up.
And I couldn't pick it up by myself. So I literally had to run a quarter mile down to a parking lot where there were only two other people. And they see this crazy woman in all this weather that's coming in. And I'm just like, can you guys come help me? And they helped me come get my bike up and actually had to help hold the bike for me while I got on because it was so windy. I was going to fall over. There's also the guy without teeth that picked me up and threw me in the back of his Chevy to go get gas because I ran out of gas.
Literally threw you?
There's just plenty of moments that you'll run into where you're just like, I need someone else. So ask. Anytime I asked for help on the road, I never got a no. I never had anybody look at me and say, nope, sorry, I can't do it. And you just have to go into it with a positive attitude of like, I am shit out of luck. I really could use some help. And the big thing too is to ask, do you have the time? Do you have the time to help me? Do you have 5 or 10 minutes? Do you have 30 seconds even? Like sometimes it's just, hey, I need to pick my bike up and it's so heavy. Can you just like help me support real quick, And that'll take 15 seconds out of somebody's day. But yeah, that's a big part too of if you're not an extrovert, you also have to learn how to be one.
I have been impressed in my limited time on the road with, and I generally have a dim view of humanity, honestly, but how incredibly willing people are to just jump in and help when you need it.
Right.
And not just the people you're with, like randos that, just ridiculous things I never would have even expected. And people are like, oh yeah, no big deal, blah, blah. And it's like, wow, dude. And so that's why I try to pay it forward as much. Like if I see a motorcyclist on the side of the road, I'm pulling over. Unless I'm like on my way to the emergency room, I help that guy push start his Harley, cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and I was like, "Bro, are you good?" And he's like, "No, I can't get this thing moving." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, that will not do. I will help you get it going." Just like stuff like that, because I just know someday that's going to be me.
It makes a huge difference too. Like it's a pay it forward mentality. And I think if you have that, it can go really, really far. I mean, I feel like I went into this with your kind of perspective on humanity and was really kind of discouraged about where everybody was at. And especially when I did my trip from basically Canada down to Mexico, all down the western coast, it completely changed my perspective. Obviously, even Southeast Asia took it even further. I believe in people more than I ever have. But that trip was really the beginning of changing that for me because I was alone and I was experiencing so much kindness and generosity and hospitality from people. Like, I essentially booked most of my trip down because campsites were so expensive to stay with people from the ADV Writer Forum. And I mean, I had people that took me out to dinner that just wanted to hear my story, that asked how they could contribute, like anything, like asking if I needed, tools, if I needed anything for my bike, sending me on different routes, like to secret spots. Like, and again, like I was telling you, like, I'll never forget the toothless guy that picked me up on the side of the road. Like, I had no idea what I was getting into with that, but I needed gas. And I never had a situation where when I asked for help or when I was relying on other people that it did me wrong. It was incredible to feel so kind of like in tune with the universe and have everything go right. Now, granted, plenty of things went wrong, but in those moments, I think it really reestablishes your faith in humanity because I really do think people are kind and good and do just want to take care of each other when the time calls for it.
You're doing a terrible job of making this sound bad and like something people should not do. Like
Yeah.
listening to like the wisdom, self-confidence, and like self-realization that you've achieved, the way you were able to process, negative life experience and learn to kind of leave it behind. And then now you're just like, and also everyone's awesome all the time and it's fantastic. It's like, this is why this thing
Yeah.
sounds so romantic and amazing because these are
Yes.
possibilities, but it's not all that. It's just what you remember. I mean, like it was
Right.
probably a lot of type 2 fun out there, I'm guessing.
Yes. I mean, one of the big examples that I discuss is I took the old highway through Big Sur, which goes up through the mountains. And it was an incredible experience. I was on that road. It was probably like, I think 14 miles. And it was like probably beginner, intermediate level ADV road. It was super fun. But I dropped my bike in a rut. And it was 85, 90 degrees out. I was in straight sun. I was out of water.
Yeah.
I was still 5 miles out, and I was in deep trouble if I didn't get my bike up and get it started and everything else. And you just kind of have, like, especially in those moments when you're alone, like, yeah, I could have hiked down to the road if I had to, but the problem is, like, I didn't have cell phone reception. Like, I was just in trouble. And you just have those moments where you got to figure it out. Like, yeah, type 2 fun right there. There was also plenty of times where I felt lonelier than I ever have in my life and I cried myself to sleep. There were nights when I didn't sleep because I was listening to barn owls eat other things outside of my tent.
I've heard that story.
There were times when I felt the pressure to come home, when I felt the pressure to give up what I was doing because I wasn't having the success or learning what I wanted to or anything else. And you have those really shitty moments where it's just like, no, it's hard. It's really hard. It is hard waking up and being alone all the time. And I can look back on it now with this level of wisdom and kind of just like compassion for anybody that's been in it and really love the time I had. But when you're in it, it sucks a lot of the time. And it's just, you just kind of have to go into it knowing that you won't really quite understand it until those moments happen, but they're very, very real.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, there you brought it back. Now it sounds like it sucks again.
Yeah. I guess I've got two more points and I'll try and get through them quickly. One of the big ones that a lot of people don't take into account is you always need to know what the weather is going to do. Always. A week out, 3 days out, 2 hours out. You always need to be aware of the weather in your area, no matter what, because it will determine where you sleep. It'll determine your work schedule. It'll determine where you're going to ride. All of those things are super, super important for your safety. And if you are a content creator or you are a remote worker and you have tech and stuff like that that you can't have getting soaked or damaged or anything like that, even if you have waterproof luggage, there is nothing more gut wrenching and gut churning than when you're riding through a torrential downpour and you hope that the seals on your waterproof bags hold up. Because, oh my God, it's terrifying. Tech is not inexpensive. It's a huge expense nowadays. And so make sure that you have an up-to-date weather map, and that is something you are consistently pushing yourself to look at. It makes a huge difference, and it'll make your life a lot easier. The last one, it's kind of a tough one because I'm not this way. I obviously didn't even really do this for myself. It just kind of played out this way. But the last thing is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given in my life is something that you should take into this, which is you should give yourself permission to quit. This isn't something that is meant for everybody. This is something that takes a lot of resilience and a lot of gumption and a lot of just making yourself do it. And that type of lifestyle is not conducive to every personality type. It is for mine. I'm insane. I'm type A. Like, I've always been like this my whole life. And so this fit me, but it doesn't fit everybody. And road life should also just be, in my opinion, a chapter of your life, not your entire life. You know, it's a beautiful and challenging experience that's meant to kind of be like a factory reset, I feel like, to send you a direction you want to go or to give you a different type of future. But I also think it can have some negative and detrimental impacts on you over time if you let it go on too long. Also, take advantage of the fact that you will probably only get the chance to do it one time. You know, I did. You know, I was 33 when I set out on the road, and I knew that I was going to get one chance because I knew there were other things I wanted to do with my life later that would not ever grant me the opportunity to do this again. And one of those was getting married and having kids, which is something I want with my life. But I wasn't in a place where that was even within reach at that point. So I said, whatever, let's just see how this goes. And I took advantage of that. But you need to kind of be in that mentality of, if you have the chance, take it, because you might not get it again. You never know what's going to happen. And push yourself, you know, get out there. Don't be complacent, you know, embrace the unknown. One of the greatest gifts I got from this was learning the mentality of expecting the unexpected. Like, I don't have any expectations of what tomorrow is going to have anymore, because when you live a life like this, you don't get to. You wake up and every day is different. Every day shit blows up in your face, and you just have to be malleable and kind of mold to the insanity of life and happenstance around you. And the only way you get that is by living in a way like this, off the bike, being a nomad, and having to be ready for anything.
One, malleable, great English major word. Two, what's interesting to me about this point is two things. I think one, the idea of giving yourself permission to quit, right? Because like you said, it's not for everybody, and that's okay. Like, it's okay if you're not enjoying it and getting something out of it. You know, once you push through the initial "this sucks" and it's still not fun, why are you doing it? But two, I think what's interesting listening to you talk and being fortunate enough to have known you before you left, right?
Yeah.
And to have seen the before and after, Grace, is while you're out there, the person that leaves is not the person that comes back, right? You're different. And so it is maybe great for the person who left, but 14 months in, Grace was a different person, and 14 months in, Grace was like, you know what? I don't know that this is for me anymore. Or there's other things I want to do that this is keeping me from doing it. That's okay too. Every step, right, is, even if it's in the wrong direction, is on the journey to success or on the journey to where you're eventually heading. And sometimes you don't know what direction you want to go in until you've gone the wrong way for a while. Or sort of the wrong way, right? Like, you're going north, and where you actually wanted to go was northeast. At least you're headed kind of in the right direction, right?
Yeah,
you just make a slight adjustment. And I think so there's two prongs to that. One, if it's just not for you, it's just not for you. And two, maybe it is at first and eventually it isn't, and that's okay too. It's kind of like Forrest Gump, just like one day he's like, I don't think I want to run anymore. I'm tired.
I'm done running. Yeah.
And he just went home, and that was it.
Yeah. And
like,
everybody had remember the crowd of people behind him that had this existential idea about what it was going to mean.
What do we do now?
Yeah, I just wanted to do this for a while. And honestly, that's exactly how I felt about kind of walking away from road life. You know, my original plan was 2 to 5 years. That was what I wanted to do. And I got 14 months in, and I got a job as a documentary filmmaker, and it changed my life. because all of a sudden I realized, oh, this is what I want to do. This is kind of the type of art, the type of creativity that I want to invest myself in. And obviously I moved back to Oregon where I was missing a lot of my friends and watching their kids grow up and, having those elements of myself that had changed so much and valued things so much differently than I used to. And so it just became a no contest. And I gave myself the permission to walk away because I had had 14 months. I had healed the wounds I wanted to heal. I'd grown up so, so much. And I learned so much about who I was and the woman I wanted to be and the woman I had become that it just didn't matter anymore. Like I could walk away from it and I felt so good about the journey and what I'd been through. And it's not a question of whether I could do it again. I could sell everything tomorrow and walk out of here and not bat an eyelash. But I didn't want to do that. Not anymore. I'd had my fun, I'd had my chapter, and I was ready for something different.
You'll always have Paris.
Yeah. You will always have Paris. You'll always have Forrest Gump running. I still love that moment where everybody's like, what do we do now?
I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice you were back there.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I think the giving yourself permission to quit is something I tell people all the time because I know there's a lot of people like me that take on, hobbies, passion pursuits, side hustles, whatever the hell you want to call it. And you just spend years not getting anywhere. And, not everybody will have you're one of the things I think is so incredible about you, Ben, is just that like you hit a window and you were authentically yourself. And I think that putting in the work you do, being authentic and consistency paid off for you in a way that was just so cool to watch, which is what got you to where you are. And there's a lot of people that don't quite hit that level and it gets very frustrating. And I think you have to have those moments where you just realize like it's incompatible and you need to try something else. And it's okay to do something different.
Well, and I think maybe, I don't know, but this is my guess based on what you're saying, is that you discover, one, you have a lot of time to think about why you did the thing in the first place, right? And maybe you thought you had something to prove and you didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And maybe instead of proving the thing that you thought you had to prove, what you realize is that you don't actually give a shit.
Yeah.
And that is self-confidence, that is getting to know yourself, and that's okay too, right? Like it's like, why, who, what? No, it's okay. I could just do, and that's kind of the difference that I see in you is like you definitely you give less of a shit now, but like in a good way. You're just like, you don't sweat the small stuff,
I went into this and I felt like I had to prove something and I did walk away and I realized that, and I think the big part of this for me too is realizing that like any kind of notoriety I have as an influencer in that realm of life is just by pure happenstance of being around people that do this, whether it's you or whether it's been Alex in the past or Maggie and Justin or whatever else. Like I have friends in that world, but I started to realize how much I did not give a shit about that. And I think when that started to happen, my brain started to switch a different direction. I started to realize that I didn't care what anybody thought. I just wanted to be happy and do the things that made me happy and made me feel fulfilled as a human being. And granted, that's gotten me to a lot of really cool places and gotten me to projects. But the big thing that you kind of set out sometimes, I think, to try and prove to other people. And then I think really what it comes down to is you're trying to prove it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was on the road, one of the hardest things that I experienced was how unrelatable I was to everyone around me. I would go home, I would be with friends, and this is probably, I think, the lowest thing you can kind of realize when you do something like this is you are unrelatable to everyone around you. No one understands what you're going through. No one understands what it's like to wake up at 2 a.m. when the storm comes in and you don't sleep for 3 days. No one understands how tired you are when you have to be in full gear riding 5, 6, 8 hours a day. No one understands what all of that is because they're not in it. You are. And that mental shift comes when all of a sudden you understand that like, oh, nobody's going to be able to relate to me and that's fine. This experience isn't about them. It's about me. It's about what I'm getting out of it. And that changes everything. But it's not a walk in the park. It is very tough. It definitely obviously has certain effects on people. I'm a very, very different person than I was 2 years ago. And I'm super proud of that.
Yeah, I really miss old Grace. God, the new one sucks.
I know. I'm such a fun kill.
Right? She's just, I can't even
Terrible.
rattle her anymore. Nothing bothers her. It's annoying.
Just like, oh, the world's blowing up. All right, what are we doing later?
Whatever. What
Drink?
whiskey did you bring?
Yeah. Where's my margarita?
This is not a single malt. What the hell?
So true. Well, I guess that's what I got. If anybody has any comments or questions, please shoot me a message on Instagram. Obviously, leave it in the comments below the video too. I'm happy to answer any questions people have and elaborate on that. But yeah, Ben, do you have any questions for me about Nomad life?
It's interesting because I know you were like initially mildly trepidatious about,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to talk about myself the whole time, but it's not. That's not really what we were talking about, right? We're talking about the hero's journey. We're talking about a journey of self-discovery and growing up and processing trauma, and like these are shared experiences that all human beings have, and everyone's journey is different. Not everyone's going to hop on a motorcycle and go.
No.
But everyone at some point sits down and processes and figures out, right? And your timing was great because like the ancient Greeks were like, you're not an adult until you're 30. So you hit it about the time when you're supposed to get your shit figured out, which I did too, like because my kid was born when I was 29, which was a big like, and then I finished college and then I was like, okay, I probably need to quit screwing around. So it worked out well, and I'm I'm proud of you, and I appreciate you sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it would be easy to just romanticize it and not admit your weaknesses and struggles right along the way. But you come from a place of genuinely wanting to help people understand the experience, and honestly, it's you want to like in mountain biking, they always have a small obstacle at the beginning that's difficult, right? They call it a squirrel catcher. So that, because if you can't handle that, you can't handle the rest of the trail. That's kind of what you just provided, is like, if this sounds like something that you're not 100% into, maybe it's not for you, and that's okay. And I think people need that too. So thank you for the perspective and for your vulnerability and honesty.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be at a point, I mean, and I'll stress this one more time. You have to be at a point in your life where you have nothing to lose. Or I feel like you won't quite be able to invest in something like this.
You know, like
it's just it's such an experience, and it takes so much of who you are to go into it full force. And that way also you walk away from an experience like this and you are different. You have kind of found what you needed to find for yourself, and to make your life better and to make you a better human being for yourself and for the people around you, which at the end of the day is what we all need to be doing all the time.
Right. Yeah. And what that means changes based on who you are, where you are, how old you are, and you just need to be flexible, open-minded, and listen to people.
Yes.
And it's like I try to live my life by the improv philosophy that was drilled into me at like 18 years old. It's like, yes, and I can't do anything about what came before. All I can do is accept it and figure out what I'm going to do about it. And I just work with and have been around so many people that want to relitigate the past, and it's like, it doesn't matter. We can't change it. What are we going to do now? Right? Get your teachers that would be like, oh, these kids show up and they don't have the skills they need. Great, they're your kids now. What are you going to do? How are you going to change that? Because complaining about middle school teachers does not help the kids in your classroom right now. You're wasting your time. Sorry, that's a weird tangent, but
but that's a perfect, like, I mean, this is a perfect, allegory to, like, I was still upset about being divorced. I was still upset about my life not being what I thought I wanted it to be.
You were looking backward.
And there are a lot of elements of my life that I look back on and I was like, well, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like, I don't know who I want to be anymore. And instead of focusing only on that, I said, well, we're just going to do, again, factory reset, and I'm going to figure out how to make it better. So I just did the only thing I could, which was pick up and threw myself onto the road. And that's just kind of how it gets sometimes. You have to be accountable for yourself. If you don't like where you are, you're the only person that can change it. No one else can do that for you. You have to step up to the plate and go, I need change. I need to make myself better, healthier, happier. And the only way you do that is by making the decisions to change that. It's not anybody else's responsibility other than your own to make yourself happy. And that gets lost in our society now. It really does. And it bothers me. It's one of my soapboxes. And I think that comes from having this experience. It's just, you have all the tools you need to build the life you want. You just have to actually do it.
And on that note, because we're now veering into existential philosophy territory, which is a great conversation for
How
us to
did,
have
how did,
offline over a bottle. But
yes.
I think maybe that's a great place to say thank you, Grace, for sharing your experience. And obviously, wherever we are, if you're on my YouTube channel, there's space for comments below, and Grace obviously pops in and out. So if you have thoughts,
Yes.
questions, please feel free to leave those. Also, consider subscribing or following on whatever location you're listening or watching us, whether that be Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever it is. We're all over the
Yes.
place. And we appreciate your support, and we're so happy to have such a loyal band of internet writing buddies. We're not the internet writing buddies. Grace and I are not the only
Oh,
one.
you are
We're
our
all
buddies.
internet writing buddies. So,
Yeah.
Grace, if people want to find you and follow you and find this amazing video that you just posted, where should they go?
YouTube for the Thailand video. It's under the Graceful Renegade. That is my channel. I am also the Graceful Renegade on Instagram. That's where you can find me. And again, also, if you have questions about any of the stuff, DM me on Instagram. That is one of the easiest places to find me and get a response. I am only on those 2 social media platforms. But Ben, what platforms are you on?
Don't DM me because I get so many messages and I feel really guilty that I don't have time to respond to them all. So I'm sorry if you have DM'd me. I just get overwhelmed and start ignoring them all. But anyway, as a non-social person, yikes. You can find me on Instagram at Dork in the Road, but my main platform is Dork in the Road on YouTube, and where we do all the dual sport adventure moto camping shenanigans, and then where you can find the Internet Writing Buddies podcast. But Grace, I just want to say thanks again. It's a pleasure every single week, and honestly, knowing that we got into this level of existential discussion after only an hour makes me wonder what the hell is going to happen when we're stuck in a car together for 13 hours coming up in 2 weeks on our way to Death Valley. So maybe we should just record it.
Yeah.
But for now, and as always, I just want to say thank you all very much for watching and listening. And please do not forget to be excellent to each other.
And live wild, ride free, everybody. Bye.
Bye.